Hello. Hello. It's been a while. It's been probably about a year. Only because I have completely stayed off of social media for my own mental benefit. Yeah, no one, like only a select few people know or knew what happened and why I'm here back in the good old US of A. Okay, so back last year, almost a year to date, maybe like a month off in July 2018, my husband and I made the decision to move to the Philippines. And I'm sorry if you can hear people mowing the lawn, but that's just a side effect of summer. Anyways, so my husband and I just packed up our humble one-bedroom apartment in Pittsburgh, and then we moved to where my parents live. Yeah, my parents own a resort, and in January 2018, my husband and I stayed with my parents for our honeymoon. And the entire time, like we were there for maybe like 3 weeks. The entire time, my mom was like, Christy, this is going to be yours someday. So this is all the things we can do. We can do it like this, like that. And so she was like feeding my head with all of these ideas of like, this is going to be your inheritance. This is why we bought it, to leave it to you and your sister. The whole thing just seemed attractive to me for various reasons. The primary reason, at least for me, I can't speak for my husband's point of view. And just keep in mind, everything that I'm saying is from my experience, okay? From here on, I can't speak to anyone else's opinions. I can only surmise what they could be thinking. So I'm just trying to cover my ass here just in case anything legal might arise. Okay, so from my point of view, the reason why moving to the Philippines seems so interesting and intriguing is because Dyer and I have been like thinking about starting a family, right? And since we are not financially ready to have a child in this country, then it just seemed more feasible to go to the Philippines and have a child. Plus, like, hospital care is so much cheaper. Like, I had a doctor's visit when I was in the Philippines, and I had checked out. I got pills, like medication. It was only $20. So, hospitals are not, like, one can be like, well, the care isn't as good in the Philippines as it is in the US, fair enough. But it just seemed like a good idea because, well, another reason is because if I gave birth to our child, it was very important for me to have my mom there in the birthing room. Okay, clearly I'm not ready to have a child. I don't know what it's called, but to have my mom present, and I wanted our child to learn Filipino culture because here where I live in this section of the East Coast, there are that I know of no Filipinos. There's no Filipino stores. There's no Filipino products except for Philippine mango juice, which you can get at like Trader Joe's. But anyways, so there's no Filipino culture readily available. Like, you really have to go into the suburbs to find my Filipinos. Another reason I mean, I kind of touched on briefly, is that it would be more financially better for us to start off our married lives in somewhere cheaper. And I used to live in California, and I moved to the town I live now, and it's a city, but it's cheap-ish, but it's starting to go up as far as expenses and rent is concerned. So I was like, okay, my parents can probably like help us get started with like a house. Like we could actually like own our own house and possibly design our dream house. And I would be running the resort. And so after our honeymoon, I told my husband, Dyer, that like, hey, what do you think of this idea? If you don't want to do it, I totally understand. But anyways, I used to live there, and so I know what it's like. So I just have to throw that out there. And he doesn't. So I was like, hey, if this idea makes you feel uncomfortable, then we don't have to do it. We can just like make it work. And his immediate family lives here. And so we kind of have like some support, but I mean, it's not the same as Filipino support, like a communal support, if you know what I mean. I honestly don't know if anyone will understand that who is not Filipino or Asian or brown for that matter, but anyways. And he was just like, yeah, that seems a great idea. Like, it's near the beach. We were both beach people. Your parents seem really nice. It seems like a good plan. So we sold everything. Well, we didn't sell everything, but we packed up 8 balikbayan boxes and we shipped them up to the Philippines. And then in July, we arrived in the Philippines. Okay, so Dyer just walked in and he has to poop and shower, his whole thing. Anyways, whatever. I can edit this out, I probably won't. But what was I saying? It felt bad, but I thought it's because I'm moving again. And in the past 5 years, I've moved a lot, like a lot. Like I moved from Reno to Sacramento to the Philippines, from the Philippines to LA, from LA to Sacramento, from Sacramento to Pittsburgh, and then Pittsburgh to back to the Philippines, a full circle. So I was just like, I just don't want to move anymore, okay? But all of the pros seem to outweigh the cons. That's because I'm dumb and I forgot about the cons. I am a toxically positive person. If you don't know about me, anything about me, that just sums me up. I am an unfortunate, altruistic person. So we moved, and immediately it just went bad. Okay. We arrive like 30 hours later in Ninoy Aquino airport, and I can't fucking find my parents at the airport. Because for people who've never been to the Philippines, if you go through the Ninoy Aquino airport back into the city, so you go through the baggage claim, and then you go around, and then there's just a gate. And behind that gate is just full of relatives waiting for people to come out. I couldn't find them. We didn't have a phone. I wrote down my parents' phone number, and someone who I assume was part of the airport lent me her phone, and then I called my parents, and my parents didn't pick up, and then I was freaking out because we had no money. We spent like a majority of our money getting there, and keep in mind my parents did pay for the plane ticket to go over there, so that was nice. I appreciated that, but everything else, like the moving costs, it was all ours, and we had probably like, I think it was like either $50 to $100 to our name at that point. And then when I see my mom and my parents, they acted like they could not have cared less. If anything, they seemed pissed that they were put out picking us up from the airport. Um, I I understand why, because where they live and the airport, it's an 6 to 8 hour trip. You know, it's a ride. My dad insisted that we go to the resort immediately. No time to rest, no time to like go to a hotel, maybe take a proper shower. We did have a meal, but he was like, no, because there's a riot going on in downtown because of the president or something, and we don't want to be stuck in a riot. And I was like, okay, then I guess we'll just go. So we go on this trip, on this road trip in a van to where my parents live up north, and it starts raining, just pouring. There were points during the trip where the tires were entirely submerged, and all of us, just at least Dyer and I, our buttholes were so clenched. We were so nervous that something was going to happen to the car, that we were going to be stranded. There was like, when you go through the rural roads, there's like not a lot of light, and we were just worried that the car would float away. And so my parents made a decision to finally just stay at a hotel real quick. So we wake up the next morning, we go to the resort, and everyone immediately got sick because my mom is a sickly person, but she just got sick, and then she started like coughing on everybody, and so we basically got sick. And so by the time we got to the resort, we all, well, Dyer and I didn't feel well, but not enough to not take care of ourselves. But my mom was just like ill. She was out. So we got there, and so we find out that there's no water. So after each major rain, the local municipality takes it upon themselves to shut off all the water. And the logic that I've heard but can't verify is because the water tank water supply is open and they are afraid of contamination. We went about, I don't want to know, like 3 to 4 days. I'll have to ask Dyer. He'll probably remember, but it was a while until the water came back on. And then like Dyer was pissed, not because the water was shut off, but there was an immediate lack of communication from my parents. And I told my dad, I was just like, hey, it's not about the water, it's about you didn't communicate to us about the water not being shut off. Dyer can deal with not having water. I mean, let's just say he can deal with not having water eventually, but the fact that you don't think it's a good idea to tell us in all this time that there's not going to be any water. And then my dad was like, well, he needs to get used to it. Like, he's in the Philippines now, and he needs to stop being a baby, and you need to stop coddling him. I was like, whoa, whatever happens in my relationship, how I treat my husband is like my thing. If we're supposed to run a business together, you have to tell me things. If I'm going to be like some chief operating officer, I need to know that there's not going to be any water, especially if you had this information. So what that's telling me is that you are purposefully withholding information. And so my dad was just like, well, that's what happens. very nonchalant. And at this time, my mom had like, I don't know why my nose is running, but my mom had like zero input because she was sick. So that's another thing. Dyer and I tried to take care of my mom because no one was making sure that she was eating. No one was making sure that she was taking the correct medication, and making sure that she ate before she took certain medication. Dyer and I accompanied her to the doctor to make sure that she was okay. No one else in that complex cared enough to do any of that. And so we took care of her. And then, so my dad also got sick, so we took care of him as well. At some point, my dad was well, and he wanted to talk business. It's just... Okay, so someone had recently gotten shot, like maybe 2 days before, okay? We don't know why or how, but 2 relatives were walking their grandchild to school and they got shot. But anyways, that's the background of that. And then so while we were having this business meeting, my dad referred to the shooting, and he was just like, he thought that they got shot for land rights. This is getting mixed up. Let me try to rewind. I'm already tired. I'm so sorry. I'm already exhausted just thinking about this. Okay. Rewind again. Okay, so I took notes before the business meeting, and one of the things is just how much are we feasibly getting paid? And it's not because that was necessarily the most important thing to me, but it was because we needed to save money to build our own house. So I was just like, hey, how much are we going to get paid? And then he lowballed us so much, like a ridiculous amount. And I was like, that's not what you said in January. He's just like, I don't remember that. And Dyer's just like, well, I do, because I was there. And my dad was like, well, to be fair, Dyer, you have no experience, so I don't think I should be paying you anything because of your lack of experience. You're not a professional. And I was just like, no, but we do have the tools. They're coming. And we have, Dyer does have experience, as do I. Maybe not as much as Dyer, but he's worked on houses and construction before. So he does have experience, so I don't accept that offer. And I feel like some of you are thinking like, yeah, maybe you should have solidified the agreement before moving there. Also fair. That's a fair thought. But you also want to believe that your parents are telling you the truth. I was like, okay, well, how much are you going to pay me? And he's just like, it wasn't a good amount. And I was just like, okay, I don't accept that. And to be honest, I thought from my mother that I was already in the will. So I just wanted to verify that I was. And he was like, no, I'm not putting you in my will. Because who's to say that you and Dyer will kill me for the land?